Obviously, you can choose what state you could go ahead and do. Just because I live in, say, for example, New York, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to go ahead and file my LLC in New York. I can file it in Nevada, Wyoming, I can file it in Florida, I can file it in California. You already know what it is, man. It's Kid Billionaire B. Super excited to bring y'all. In this video, we're gonna be talking about the 7 steps on how to set up your LLC to get business funding the right way and the fast way. For those who are new to the channel, my name is Brian Waldron, did $3.5 million in 4 years with a brick and mortar event-based sales. And now we run and operate the #1 event-based coaching and consulting company in America that has now helped over 600 clients start and scale their own event space. Let's jump straight into it. In this video, like I mentioned, I'm gonna be breaking down these 7 steps. On a lot of people, there's a lot of, I don't want to say false information, but there's a lot of information on the internet in terms of how to go ahead and set up your LLC, how to go ahead and get business funding. And as somebody who has done $15 million in business funding across our company, we just want to show you guys what's worked for us so that you could do the same thing for you, okay? So the first step is, why is this even important? Why is setting up your LLC the right way? Why does it matter? Well, for one thing, number one, you want to go ahead and be able to get more funding, right? When you set up your LLC the right way with the right NICS code, classification, things of that nature, we can go ahead and get more funding, right? And it can actually get it done faster. A couple things that you want to be aware of when it comes down to setting it up the right way is, number one, the classification, right? If you ever hear about the NAICS code, or, which is basically the classification of your LLC. Some people say management, consulting, catering, food, restaurant, beverage, whatever the case may be, retail, commerce. Like, these are all different classifications. Now, the classification that you do for your LLC can impact your level of funding. This is very, very important to know. There are certain industries that are considered high risk. So with that being said, knowing what industries are high risk, like trucking or credit, or maybe even event space, you can understand how to go ahead and label your LLC. For example, right? If I know that certain industries are high risk, well, I might change the classification. Does that affect your funding? Yes, because now you can go ahead and get more funding, right? Now you're probably wondering, okay, Brian, well, what if I go ahead and have a different usage, right? What if I do have a credit repair company, but I want to go ahead and classify so I can get more funding? Then go ahead and do that. Believe me, they're not really checking like that, for real. You know what I'm saying? Another thing is the name, right? Obviously, if I know that an industry is high risk, why would the name not make it high risk? With that being said, for example, if I have Waldron Trucking, and I know that trucking is a high risk industry, well, that is going to affect my ability to go ahead and get funding, okay? Next would be the phone number and the address, right? With that being said, I can go ahead and put a personal address. Well, guess what? Now you just limited your funding, because when a bank is going ahead and looking at whether they want to lend to you or not, and they research that address and they see a personal home or personal mailbox, well, guess what? They're going to think you're a small business, and they don't want to lend to small businesses, right? Well, sorry, not small businesses like small businesses, but small business like really, really, really small businesses, right? Same thing with the phone number. If they see a personal phone number, what do you think they're going to say? Well, this isn't a legitimate business. This is a personal phone number. It's not a business line, okay? Now, with that being said, once I have these things in place, there's a couple others, but we'll stick with these for now. These are the bigger ones, right? Now, how do I go around it? Well, I can get a business line through a website like Dialpad. For the address, I can go ahead and get a virtual address through a website like Opus VO or Regis, right? For the name, just name it something generic. I always like to do last name plus holdings, last name plus consulting, last name plus services. These are some very, very easy ways to go ahead and get around that and make it less high risk. And then of course with the classification, I typically like to use a management or consulting classification. It just makes things a lot easier, okay? Number 2, what are some of the best states, right? Now, when it comes down to incorporating or getting an LLC, obviously you can choose what state you could go ahead and do. Just because I live in, say, for example, New York, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to go ahead and file my LLC in New York. I can file it in Nevada, I can file it in Wyoming, I can file it in Florida, I can file it in California. Now, there are certain states that are better, right? So we'll go ahead and look at best states. There are certain states that are better, for example, like Wyoming, like Delaware, okay? Like Nevada. Now, why are these states better for filing and incorporating, right? Well, for one thing, better tax laws. Every state is taxed differently. We're all obviously taxed at the federal level, but every state is taxed differently at the state level, okay? Number two, we also have better court, the way they operate in court. So if, God forbid, you get into litigation or whatever the case may be, the way they operate in court in New York might be a lot more friendly than, for example, California versus Wyoming versus Delaware, or whatever the case may be. So the court, right? Also, the corporate veil. The corporate veil is a big one, right? How easy is it for somebody to pierce the corporate veil? How easy is it for somebody to go through your LLC and get to your personal assets, right? Every state is different. And it's important to know these different things when you are incorporating, right? The next thing is going back to the address, right? So when you're setting up your LLC the right way, like I mentioned before, you can either do a personal address, and I'll talk about a couple different ways we do this, right? Or you can do a commercial address. Let me get a fresh piece of paper. Now, when it comes down to that, there's different layers of this, okay? You can go ahead and get, obviously you could go ahead and get an office, right? And you could go ahead and pay the overhead of an office. Or you can do something called a virtual address, where you're basically borrowing the address of another company. So if another company has a corporate address or whatever the case may be, now you can go ahead and essentially borrow their address and use it as your own. And you can do this through a website like Opus or Regis, right? Another big thing that a lot of people don't know is that you can use what's called a registered agent. Now, a registered agent, for those who don't know, a registered agent is basically the intermediary between the government and you, well, and your LLC, when it comes down to federal documents, right? So if the government has to send you some paperwork or whatever, they'll send it to your registered agent. Now, there are some registered agents that also do come with their own address. So you're essentially going from paying $100, maybe $150 a month for a virtual address to $40 a year with a registered agent. Same pros, put y'all on, you feel what I'm saying. Now, the next thing when it comes down to setting up your LLC the right way to get business funding is that you want to go ahead and get an EIN and a business bank account, okay? Now, when it comes down, just write that here, biz bank cuenta, okay? When it comes down to the business bank account, okay, and the EIN. Now, every single time you get a corporation, LLC, any type of business entity, you always get an EIN. Now, you can get it for free from the government. Just go to your New York department, sorry, not New York, but your Department of, your department website, your Secretary of State, excuse me. Or you can go ahead and have an intermediary get it for you faster, like a Swift Filings or a LegalZoom or an InkFile or any of these other websites, right? Rocket Lawyer, whatever the case may be, and they'll be able to get it for you a little bit faster, right? So with that being said, you're gonna need to get your EIN. That's the social security number of your business. Now, with that being said, once you get your EIN, you can go ahead and get a business bank account. Now, when it comes down to a business bank account, I always recommend getting a business bank account with where you already bank. So if you already bank at Chase, or you already bank at Wells Fargo, or you already bank at Bank of America, go ahead and get that business bank account over there. Now, with that being said, right? With that being said, now, when you have your business bank account, typically, I like to let it mature for a little bit, right? So say, for example, you're going home and setting up your LLC, getting business funding, whatever the case may be, I'm gonna go ahead and get a couple different bank accounts. Now, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. But this is just kind of like I don't even wanna say next level stuff, but it's like, okay, cool, you wanna kind of cross your T's, dot your I's, whatever the case may be, right? I would go ahead and get 3 bank accounts, right? A national, a regional, and a local. National is like your big ones, right? Like that's like your Chase, your Wells Fargo, your Bank of America, things of that nature. Your regional are banks that are only within a certain region, like say, for example, a Truist, Key Bank, okay? And then local would like only banks that are in your local area, like literally you can see and touch. Can't go anywhere else. You can't go to another state or whatever the case may be to go ahead and get them, right? So it's really interesting to go ahead and get one bank from each. Now you don't have to do this, but I'm just like, if you're thinking really, really big and really, really long term, you could go ahead and put a couple dollars, maybe $50 to $100 in each one of these bank accounts just to kind of keep it seasoned and active. Most of these banks, especially the smaller ones, don't look at Chase or anything like that, but especially the smaller ones, they have $0 minimum banking because they're for the community. They're a local bank, okay? So with that being said, you can go ahead and keep those mature so then when it is time to get funding, well, you already have a relationship with them. You've already seen and put money into this bank account. So now when it's time to get funding or get a line of credit or whatever the case may be, you can go ahead and do that pretty easily, okay? Number 5, now when it's time to set up your NAICS code, right? And this is super important because it goes back, the NAICS code is a classification code, right? This goes back to how lenders classify you. Like I kind of mentioned before, this is super important because if I know that this is a high risk industry, I'm not going to lend a lot of money for it. So think about the money that you would have received as a pie, right? So let's say, for example, you were going to get 100K from XYZ bank, okay? Just to kind of put it all up together, right? Say, for example, you're gonna get 100K from XYZ bank, right? So now with that being said, now it's like, okay, cool. Well, you named it a high risk industry. So now you just lost 5K because you named it a high risk industry. Well, now you also put a personal phone number. So you just lost another 10K, right? Oh, well, you also put a personal address. So you just lost another 5K. Right? And you see how it just kind of trickles down and trickles down and trickles down. And before you realize it, that 100K just went down to 80K or maybe even 60K, all because you didn't set up your business the right way the first time, right? And these are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they try to go ahead and get funding because they don't understand these different things. They don't understand the way the banks think. They don't understand the way the underwriters think, right? When we go ahead and get a client funding for their business, for their event space, we do something called a credit stack and assessment. We go through a full thing, right? And I'll just spend a couple of minutes just to kind of take you guys behind the scenes per se, if you will, or whatever the case may be, right? So when it comes down to when we do something, like I said, a credit stack and assessment or a CSA, where step number 1, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at your credit report, right? So see the credit report, see where the utilization is. We're gonna see where the current banking relationships are, things of that nature, okay? Now, once we have that information, we can create a customized action plan. So when it comes down to the customized action plan, now it's like, okay, cool, Marcus, you have an existing relationship with Chase, you have a low TransUnion, and you have high utilization on Equifax. Well, we're definitely gonna go ahead and go work with Chase. We are going to see what we need to do to bring up the TransUnion. And we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we can, if we have that high Equifax, we're gonna go ahead and look at what banks pull from Equifax, and we're gonna go ahead and recommend a card there. Maybe like Equifax, who? We have basically in our database all these different banks that go ahead and pull from these different cards. So all that from these different bureaus. So then at that point, now we can go ahead and make sure, okay, cool. They have this on Experian, this on TransUnion, this on Equifax. We can go ahead and start playing Tetris with these things, right? And forgive me for not remembering off the top of my head. It's been a long day. This is like my second YouTube video or whatever. So want to make sure that we go ahead and utilize these assets and these instruments to go ahead and make sure that we're getting our client the best results for funding. Then at that point, we make sure, like all the things that I just showed you, that the LLC is structured the right way, that the name is structured the right way, that the phone number is structured the right way. So then at that point, when they go and apply, our clients are getting 30, 60, 50, 100, $120,000 in funding to now go ahead and put that into their events-based business. It's that simple. Guys, really hope you enjoyed the video and essentially how we're gonna go ahead and set up that LLC to get business funding. If you are having trouble getting funding for your business or for your events-based business and wanna learn how to find, fund, and fill it, definitely make sure you hit the link in the description to go ahead and work with us, apply to work with us so we can go help you get you the same thing. Let's get it.